Okay, hi everyone. So my name is Vittorio. I am a systematic portfolio manager for Schroders, investing in credit, and I'm here with my friend Alessandro, who's going to introduce himself in a second. So we've built Greyhound, which is a real-time collateral intelligence for hard assets. So what it means behind all this buzzword, essentially at the moment, banks and investors, they are pouring down like billion and billion of dollars into the investing in the construction for financing the construction of hard asset, like could be solar farms or data centers. But since the moment that they signed the agreement, they basically have no exposure on how these underlying assets actually perform. And this is what we're trying to solve with Greyhound, essentially provide the visibility and transparency in a very opaque market. So, as I said, there are hundreds of billions that are invested at the moment in this market of financing data centers, for example. And all of these are monitored with 90-day-old PDFs. And hopefully will be a bit more clear in a second. The collateral that are financed, they are physical and volatile. What does it mean? That imagine like building a data center. This means that you have to buy the GPUs, CPUs, or for a solar farm, like you need to buy the real assets, right? In order to build a solar farm. However, they depreciate. Their utilization can change, their performance can change based, for example, on the weather in case of solar farms. So generally speaking, the asset value, the value of these assets can change every single day. However, what happens in real life is that the performance and in general, like the value of these assets are reported on a static basis on every other quarter, meaning that the owner of the data center, for example, will report to their investors every 90 days with a PDF, a static PDF, on the performance of the data center and the status of the data center, of the assets in the data center. So as you can imagine, this is the worst condition for an investor. This means that the moment that this reporting is shipped, since the moment that is given to the investor is already stale, is already old. So, and by the time that something goes wrong with the data center, for example, like you might have GPUs that break down, or the efficiency is not good enough, or the utilization is not high enough, you will only realize it with a delay, which can be significant, right? And for an investor, this is the worst case scenario. And However, being able to spot potential problems in advance, in time, allow you to take also some measures. So the solution that we are presenting here, that we are proposing of Greyhound, is providing a terminal, a platform where the investors can monitor the status of the asset they're investing in real time, instead of always being late in monitoring. So it's based on three steps, three components. First of all, the ingestion. So from the legal document, can be long, very difficult to code, etc., into something that is actionable, into, for example, the covenants, the capital structure. So all of these can be translated seamlessly, very easily via AI. There's the monitor part that is basically what I was hinting before, like the investor can track the performance of the data centers, for example, in real time, and how this happened, connecting via API to the underlying assets. All of these assets already provide all the information of utilization, performance, etc., for monitoring purposes for the owners of the data center. So all this information can be translated into credit information. And finally, there's a reaction. So you see it coming in advance, and you can take action. For example, calling the owner of the management and ask for clarification if something goes wrong. What are the steps that are going to be taken in order to solve as soon as possible? It can be the loan that the investor has can be sold if it's in time, right, before it gets too late. Or it can also take some hedging, for example, buying credit default swap on the name of the tenant of the data center. So before just moving on with Alessandro, is going to show you a live demo. I just wanted to give you an example of what it means in practice and how these deals are structured, right? So let's imagine that you have Ibercore S.A. is a Spanish company that wants to build and operate a new data center. This data center is used by some companies that need the computational power. Imagine like hyperscaler tenants like AWS, Microsoft, SAP, could be anyone, right? Anyone who needs some computational power. Ibercore, to build this data center, needs a financing, needs like to raise money, and this happens via raising some debt. So let's imagine it needs like 120 million facility credit. And given that the amount is huge, obviously it has to have some underlying assets that back the loan. And these loans are then sold in different tranches to, like, for example, could be senior, mezzanine, junior, depending on the risk that the investor wants to take. So Greyhound sits exactly there between the investor and the operator. It continuously monitor the performance, it continuously monitor like the covenants, and it provide information and transparency to the investor, who can then, as I said before, react and act in time before it's too late, instead of waiting the 90 days, the quarter, for the next report.
Vittorio, you have 1 minute.
Okay. Okay, I'm gonna pass it to Alessandro. He's next to me. He's having issues as well with his.
Hey, hi all. So really quickly, if you can see, this is the platform. It has different tabs. You can add a new deal if you wish to. It will take whatever information the deal has and put them in the software. Then from here you can run a simulation. So let's say this is say a live deal. So while time passes, things of course change. So you can keep track of what's happening with the covenants. You can keep track of how the pool is performing, the obligors, if they're stressed, distressed or not. You will have active triggers, a view on the active triggers, so you know what's happening. And you can see the clusters. You can see as well the waterfall. So for example, in this case, a cash trap was activated to pay back the class A principal because there's some stress in one of the covenants. You can see the location of the assets. So the Dublin one is the one stressed. You can also have a view on the pricing in case on a secondary market, and it will give you the spread of the issuance and then the fair spread once the deal is live. And last thing you can see is the rating. So rating, of course, changed because the asset was stressed for class B and C because of the junior classes. And last thing, it will upload the structure of the deal as well, with a little bit of description how the transaction work and what the key risks are. That's pretty much it. You can do this for different deals. So for example, solar farms. You can do this for wind turbines, and maybe in the future with open banking, you can implement this also for mortgages and other asset classes. Thanks a lot.
Fantastic. Thank you.